All right. Well, thank you for joining us again for another episode of Real Parables. Today, we will be talking about a movie that there's a good chance you haven't seen.
Yeah.
Um, it's a relatively new animated movie uh, made for probably, what do you say, like preteen, like that 9 to
Yeah.
12-year-old.
It's got a lot of I think it's a good like movie for the whole family because it has references for the
Yeah.
entire family, new, young and old.
But I don't
Just
think like little kids would
no, not
appreciate it.
little kids would not appreciate it.
It's kind of in that uh, Spider Verse,
Yeah.
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. That's the person who, that's the company who made this movie. Actually, the same people, but it's got a lot of action, a lot of uh, possibly some images that might be scary for some younger kids,
Involving
or
Furbies.
maybe even McKenna Wagner.
Yeah.
She scares easily.
Yeah. It's funny when I was looking up stuff about this movie, I found out that the director uh, is who the family is loosely based off of because he always felt like him going into film school, his dad hated
Mm.
because his dad was all about nature and hated
Oh,
technology.
gotcha.
So that's kind of where the premise of the movie came from.
Okay.
And apparently, his favorite part of this movie was getting Hasbro's okay to use Furbies.
That's that's fantastic.
Yeah, he's
That
actually
was
the voice of the Furbies.
that was actually a great part of the movie.
Yeah.
But we're going to be talking about Mitchell's versus the Machines. It is a Netflix movie that came out last spring, I believe.
Hmm.
I think it was like March or April of 2021. Didn't really get a whole lot of talk.
It kind of flew under the radar,
Yeah,
so I'd never even heard about it.
yeah. I just, for the past couple months, part of doing Real Parables is trying to keep an eye out for potential movies that we can watch and um, glean some knowledge from. And this one kept popping up. It kept getting great Metacritics and great Rotten Tomato reviews. And so we decided to sit down and watch this. So this was most of the movies that we do here on Real Parables are movies that we have both, or at least one of us, have watched multiple times.
Yeah, usually.
So this is the first time I think neither one of us, well, except for Soul, because we did that when it first came out.
Hmm. That was
But
our very first episode.
that was our very first episode. But usually, we don't do this, but this one seemed like a appropriate movie. So that's what we did. We decided to sit down and watch it and look. And I know I found myself at various times forgetting what I was supposed to be doing, and
Yep.
uh, but that's okay.
Signs of a good movie.
Signs of a good movie. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that we were able to glean from this movie. But if this is your first time to Real Parables, or just as a reminder, there will be spoilers.
Yeah.
Um, and our whole purpose in doing this is not just to give movie reviews. I mean, there's plenty of people out there who do,
Better ways of
yeah,
reviewing movies.
yeah, movie reviews, even movie reviews from a Christian standpoint.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people that do that. We're not trying to be that person. Is it a good movie? Yes, it's a good movie. Watch it. That's my review.
I feel like our opinions of movies is probably not the same as other people's either. We like
No.
weird,
Yeah.
dumb stuff.
Oh yeah. We're gonna have some weird ones that come through this season.
We've had weird ones.
Yeah. We're gonna.
Time Bandits.
Yeah. Oh, you're gonna
Yeah.
get another one. We're gonna in a few weeks. We're gonna do another really weird one that most people haven't watched. That is fantastic. But we won't talk about that right now. Right now, we're talking about Mitchell's and the Machines, and our purpose here is to try and find um, these movies. Something that is out there in popular culture. I don't know how many people have watched Mitchell's versus the Machines on Netflix. I would imagine it's probably several million
Yeah.
people have watched this movie, and that's the reason why we are looking at films like this, because that is the parabolic things that we can use in today's culture. We don't, as a society, we don't necessarily all understand farming or fishing or whatever, building.
Yeah.
Um, but we, for the most part, I'd say at least 95% of America has a pretty good handle on media, on movies and television and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So our goal here is to look at movies like Mitchell's versus the Machines and others that are out there like it, and try and find some modern day parables that we can use in these stories that can help relate the deeper truths about God and ourselves and just our life together. So, with that in mind, let's dig into some of the things that we were able to find in this movie.
Hmm.
But just as kind of an opener, just to get a good handle on what this movie is about. Um, the movie centers primarily on a character. Her name is Katie Mitchell. She is an eccentric, artistic teenager, and she kind of has, at least in the beginning of the movie, and through the first half at least, two primary goals in life. The first one is to move out of her parents' home, and the second is to become a filmmaker. Fortunately, she's just a few days away from her first classes in her freshman year of college at an art school in California. I think this takes place. They're from like Michigan or
Yeah. It definitely feels like
yeah,
Michigan.
they're from somewhere in like the central north,
Northwest. Yeah.
somewhere in there. So they are. She's just a few days away from starting college. She has everything packed. She's already made some connections with her dorm mates. She's got her plane tickets. Unfortunately, her dad is having a really hard time saying goodbye,
Hmm.
which dads do. We like to act all tough and gruff, but
Yeah.
we're just big softies. So instead of letting her fly away to California to start her new life, he wants to try and fix some of the damage that he may have done recently in their relationship. So what does he do? Instead of talking to her about it, he he cancels her plane ticket, and with the refunded money, decides that the whole family is going to take a trip from Michigan all the way to, I think it's in the Silicon Valley,
Hmm.
San Francisco
Yeah.
kind of area. They're on this family road trip. Uh, it's what's dad's name? I can't remember.
It is. I wrote it down. It's Rick.
Rick. So it's Katie's the daughter, Rick are the two main people in this whole thing.
Yeah.
And then there's also a mom and a little brother. And uh, it's supposed to be this cool hangout time, but Katie is obviously furious, because she sees this as she's missing out on all those first days with her classmates, all the relationship building time. So they head off on this bonding trip, though, as a family, and they're going to see forests and they're going to see uh, waterfalls. They're going to go on a donkey ride down a canyon, which is kind of a hilarious five
Yeah.
seconds.
It's like a 5-second montage of this terrible journey that I wish there was like a longer story
Oh,
on.
it would have been great. I hope that they like do some deleted scenes when it comes out on. Well, I guess it's already on
I know
Netflix.
they did some short of one of the dogs movies
Yeah,
that are in the film.
and then they also see, I think, like the St. Louis Arch, but then disaster strikes. I mean,
Hmm.
with a movie called Mitchell's versus the Machines, obviously there's some kind of disaster
Yeah.
that's going to strike, and it's not just for the Mitchells; it's for the whole Earth. An army of AI robots revolt against humanity and begin corralling every single person on the planet. So this is a I wouldn't really call it much of a war because the humans don't really put up much of a fight.
No.
They are enticed by free Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
and we'll
That's
talk
all.
about that in a
That's
minute.
all you need. I
Yeah,
mean, if you've ever met any kind of teenager, they walk into your house. One of the first things they ask you, "What's your Wi-Fi password?"
yeah, every single time. But somehow, in this corralling of the entire human race, the Mitchells have managed to elude capture, and they're really the only ones that are standing in the way between uh, the end of humanity.
Yeah.
So here we have this robot apocalypse has just happened, and this is in this what is a pretty ordinary family.
Hmm.
They're we say they try to compare themselves to those, to other families later
Yeah.
on, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But they're a pretty ordinary family. The problem is they aren't really the kind of heroes that you would want. At least not from the traditional perspective. In fact, in the opening moments of this movie, the daughter who's narrating what's going on says, "Most action heroes have all kinds of strengths, but my family has nothing but weaknesses." Now, this is early on in the robot apocalypse. Um, and, she sees all of her family's personalities and quirks and the stuff they're going through. She sees all their combined efforts as being not strengths but weaknesses. So, how can weaknesses um, sometimes become strengths? Or, I mean, maybe you have an example from your own life of a weakness or a perceived weakness
Hmm.
that can become or has become a strength.
I remember as a kid, how much I hated really talking to people. Like really like, and speech was
Mm-hmm.
not really the best my best ability. Uh, so much so that when I was pretty young, my sister, who was a year younger than me, would often translate my mumbles because I just did not want to talk. I would point and go, and
Mm-hmm.
then my sister would explain what I want, even though she's 14 months younger than me. She spoke better than I did, and
Yeah.
I did not like talking, and yeah, I grew into that too, where I just really don't like talking to people. I'm pretty introverted, but through that weakness, I have learned that I'm very good at talking to people one on one
Mm-hmm.
and really getting to know people, and that's something I didn't know until I really tested the limits of that weakness,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is what they're forced to do is test the limits of all of their weaknesses
Yeah.
as a family.
Yeah. And allow those weaknesses to not define who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of my weaknesses that uh, kind of stand out. I didn't really have a problem talking to people one on one, but um, the idea of speaking in front of groups of people, I
Yeah.
was very gun shy. Public speaking
Yeah.
was not something uh, I ever wanted to do. I remember intentionally failing classes in school because the project that we were working on had some kind of presentation aspect to it, and
Hmm.
I just refused. I would turn in the work, I would do the science report on this or that and give them everything, but delivering the presentation was, 40 or 50% of the grade, and I just refused to
Yeah.
do it. I was petrified. And, but God has been able to turn that weakness into, well, at least what I believe is a pretty big strength that I have because um, I don't want to talk about superficial stuff. I want to talk about real stuff.
Hmm.
And I think God has given me the ability to speak to people's hearts and where they really are. And I don't claim that's anything that I have done. I say God has taken that weakness and he's transformed it into something else.
Hmm.
And I think that's what we see throughout this movie is yes, these people, his family all has what the world would perceive as weakness. Dad's kind of a klutz,
Hmm.
and um,
Mom's obsessed with everyone else and how the outside looks.
yeah, out the perception of things. And
Yeah,
little brother is obsessed with dinosaurs, which isn't necessarily a weakness, but he's also um,
just terrified of
ter-
everything.
terrified of everything. He's terrified of this one little girl, you know. And then Katie herself is, she is so obsessed with technology that she doesn't really see what's going on in the
Yeah,
world around her. So they have weaknesses, but later on, all those weaknesses are transformed, not necessarily in this movie by God, but
yeah,
transformed by the situation, and they're wanting to do something to not just save themselves, but to save everybody.
yeah. I think there's a lot of power in facing those weaknesses, which is what God helps you with a lot when
Mm,
you're struggling with something. Hey, I need help with this. He can help transform those weaknesses, like you were saying, and that's kind of what happens to the Mitchells. Is they are forced to confront their weaknesses
yes.
in saving the world, and it transforms them into much better versions of themselves.
Mm.
Especially the mom,
Oh,
she
she's
just
awesome.
becomes a fighting machine.
Mm.
What do they call her? The Dark One. The robots.
The dark was here. Run away.
I
That's
don't know
great.
if me and Graham have laughed like that hard in a
Oh,
movie scene in a while. It was great
hilarious.
near the end of the film.
Yeah. There's the just a side note, the animation style and the whole cinematography of this movie is incredible.
Mhm.
It's never for a second boring,
Yeah,
and it's not there's not very many animated movies that are actually boring, but this one is just it's always changing and always shifting to something else. And it's real cool. So, I hope you check this movie out.
yeah. Well, kind of going along with that, the daughter Katie, she really struggles to feel like she has a place in this family. She looks at her family and as a dynamic, she's like, this is just the worst.
Mm,
Like nobody really understands each other. Everything's just kind of terrible. But she her main issue is she just feels like an outsider. Uh, she just doesn't feel like she fits in. Uh, but she says that movies have always been there for her.
mhm,
They've always been, which is something I think I can relate to. Is
mhm,
whenever I've had a hard time, I have always gone back to movies. It's partly why I like doing this podcast, is
mhm,
because how much I love movies. But she talks about how her little brother is the only person that actually kind of gets her and
mhm,
understands who she is. Uh, she talks about how her mom believes in everyone, so she believes in her, but she doesn't really quite understand her either. Her dad is unusual and doesn't share any interest with her. But the one thing she actually is excited about in her life is this film school.
mhm,
That that this is where she will finally find her people, people that have the same interests as her. What do you would you say are your people?
mhm. I don't know. That's a good question because I don't know that I ever really had a certain group
Yeah.
that I gravitated towards. Um, I think I never gravitated towards large groups.
Mm-hmm.
So my people were usually the ones that were kind of sitting off by themselves.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter who they were. I didn't care if they were emo or athlete or what. None of that mattered to me. I just didn't want to be in a big group,
Yeah.
So I never want to feel like if I was talking that I had 15 people
Mm-hmm.
listening to me. I'd rather just have a one-on-one, like you were saying,
Yeah.
with somebody. So uh, I would say that's probably the if I was gravitating towards a kind of person, it would be the kind of person that's just out there by themselves.
Yeah. I I also I feel like I didn't really hang out with big groups either. I A lot of time the people I was hanging out with was whatever sport I was doing at the time,
Mm,
or if I was at youth group, those were my people. Like
mm,
I kind of had like in different parts of my life, different people
Mhm.
that were like my people.
Well, in North Carolina, growing up in the country, the people you hang out oftentimes are just the people who are geographically closest.
Hmm.
There really wasn't. It's not like San Diego where there's so much variety or any kind of urban setting. There were um, three, maybe four people in my neighborhood who were roughly the same age as me that I could do stuff with,
Hmm.
and that was the people I hung out with. Didn't necessarily. I mean, there were a couple of them that were okay. There
Yeah,
were there were two of them that I didn't like, but it was at least somebody to go play war with. At least
yeah,
then maybe I could throw a mud grenade at them and get some aggression out on them.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I wouldn't call them friends,
yeah.
you know. And the person who I would call my closest friend growing up was nothing like me.
Hmm.
He was just uh, he was kind of a quiet person who we'd go fishing together, or
Yeah.
we'd go squirrel hunting together, or we would go do stuff, but we didn't really spend a whole lot of time talking. You know,
You ever get any squirrels?
oh yeah, I was. That's a different story for a different day. I don't want to get canceled on the internet.
for for squirrel hunting?
The amount.
Yeah. So we're getting off track, but basically, what happens is Katie's convinced that her family are not her people.
Mm,
Her brother's the only one that kind of gets her, but her family is not her people. She's gonna go to California to her school and be with all these art people, which probably are pretty good people to hang out with.
yeah,
And it seems like that's where she belongs.
like mine.
But she kind of discovers on this long road trip to saving the world that her family is her people.
Mm,
They really do understand her. They don't always know what she actually likes because she's a teenager, and you never know what a teenager's feeling.
yeah.
Your emotions are all over the place. Uh, it's just she doesn't really see that her family actually like cares for her like they do, and then they're just doing their best just to like help
Mm,
each other out, and she finally realizes it in the end that her family is her people. And I think I can relate to that a lot. Like growing up as a teenager, even though I was very close with my family, I still kind of felt like an outsider. And I don't know if other people feel like that too
oh
in
yeah.
their family. Like it's just like a part of growing up is you feel like you reach that point in adulthood where you have to really figure out who you are,
Mm,
but your family's like, but we still want to hang out with you.
mm.
I moved away pretty far from my family to where I thought I would find my people, but here I am back home.
I think one of the things that we see, and this is just, I think this is just natural, is you get to a certain age and you no longer want to be so and so's kid.
Hmm.
I didn't want to be uh, Brian and Andrea's kid.
Yeah,
You didn't want to be Sean and Charity's kid. Not that you didn't like being their child, but you wanted to be your own person.
it was more like, oh, you're Richard Henniger's grandson. That's really what it
Yeah.
was.
But I'm sure. Well, Sean and Charity were like, you don't want to be. They didn't want to be Richard and Sharon's kids.
Yeah.
But the you you get to a point where you don't want to be referred to as, oh, you're so and so's child. You want to be your own person. You want to have your own identity. You want to be um, valued as your own person. And I think that's what we see happening here with Katie is, she doesn't feel valued in her house.
Hmm.
She puts early on in this movie, she puts a lot of time into these little animated films, right? Uh, most of them are like, well, not necessarily animated. They're like sock puppets and little movies with her dog,
Hmm.
and then she puts some animation, with that in the background, and she seems like she's gotten quite a following online.
Hmm.
but nobody in her family appreciates it.
No.
So that's part of why she wants to go to art school, because she has people there that think her stuff is great. That she's a
Hmm.
genius, that she's so funny. So there she has her own identity, and I think that's just kind of natural. We want to have our own identity as a person, but how do we do that? I mean, how do we find our identity when people keep trying to cast an identity on us? And
Yeah.
where does our identity really come from? I mean, from Katie's perspective, her identity she thought came from making these movies.
Yeah. Her comfort in life.
Yeah. From Rick's standpoint, the dad, his comfort, his identity came from he wanted to be the outdoorsman.
Hmm.
And he wanted to be the survivor.
Hmm.
He was he's portrayed as the guy who's constantly giving his family like bug out routine rehearsals.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the situation. We're gonna go practice what we'd do in the event of this. The survivalist kind of
Hmm.
person. That was his identity, and but where does our identity really come from as Christians? I think that's where we get confused sometimes.
Hmm.
We try to place so much of who we are based off of all this stuff of the world, but that's not really
Yeah.
where our identity is supposed to come from.
I we have friends that we probably hang out with more than our own family in those times, and uh, it's easy to hear your friends talking about like who they think they're becoming, who they are, and you think, oh, I want to be like that.
Hmm.
Uh, and if you have maybe a more, maybe not controlling family, but more close knit family where they have tough ideas and they want you to have those same ideas,
Mm,
it's sometimes hard to be like, well, I want to be my own person.
yeah, yeah. There's some families that definitely have very clear ideas of they
Or
want to,
who you're going to be.
yeah, yeah, what your identity is going to be. I didn't really have that so much. Did you have that growing up?
A little
Any of that
bit.
pressure?
That I got a lot more freedom the older I got.
Yeah.
I was also the firstborn, so I think they're just like, oh, I was a rule follower and the firstborn. He's fine. I feel like my sisters probably had a stricter.
Yeah. The only identity thing my parents tried putting on me was make money.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think mine was church every Sunday.
Yeah.
Always would go to church.
Yeah. Mine was your ultimate goal in life. And I think I've talked about this here before. Your ultimate goal in life is to be more financially secure than I am, which my dad was an engineer for IBM.
Hmm.
I mean, what are the chances of that? I'm not an engineer for IBM.
Yeah,
So, anyways, a lot of pressure.
yeah. I really showed my parents with church every Sunday.
You go to church more than they do.
Yeah, I do. They're pretty far from church now, so they don't even go every week.
You're showing them who's
I
boss.
know. Like, oh yeah, you want me to go to
You
church
lived
every
up to the
Sunday?
identity they wanted you to have.
Yeah.
But I think the ultimate aspect of identity that we oftentimes fail to see is, I don't want to get political, but so many times, no matter what your political affiliations are, we try to say that, like, for example, our political party is who we are as a person.
Hmm.
You know, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever. We try to say that that all the things that this group of people stands for is what I stand for. Or, in Katie's standpoint, uh, everything that this art school stands for is what I stand for. But from the Christian perspective, the only place where we're supposed to be trying to really find our identity, the only place we're supposed to have real allegiance to is our identity in Christ. And I think that's something that we far too often forget,
Yeah.
is where real identity and real um, meaning comes from.
Hmm. I agree. Uh, as they kind of go on their road trip, you kind of get to know the mom a little bit better, Linda. She kind of is also on her phone a lot, much like her kids.
Mm-hmm.
but for different reasons. She is big into social media, like a lot of moms are.
Yeah.
I think before my mom had a couple extra young ones, she was watching. She probably also was pretty big into social media. I remember when first couple years of Facebook, man, that's like seemed like what everybody was doing all the time was
All
just
the time.
on Facebook all the time.
Those
Which
silly little Farmville games.
yes, Farmville was huge,
Yeah.
but I you kind of see how she's kind of obsessed with their neighbors too.
Mhm.
They're posting a lot of pictures on social media of them going on these fun trips together and how perfect they are together,
Mm.
and she's just always talking about how perfect they are. Everything's
Voice.
so perfect.
This family is voiced by John Legend and Chrissy Teigen.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, they had a lot of cool voice actors for this movie.
Yeah, they do.
That's off track, but
Yeah.
just some cool actors in this one. But she has this idea of what a perfect family is, and in the entire movie, she's just kind of like dragged down by like, oh, there go the posies. They keep running into them. They're so perfect,
Mhm.
uh, but yet they're not the ones that save the world.
Yeah.
It's the most imperfect family that ends up doing it,
Yeah.
and I think it's because you start to see this perspective change of what perfect actually means, and you kind of see how the mom is so focused on kind of the same thing as Katie is all the weaknesses.
Mhm.
She doesn't view those weaknesses as strengths.
Mhm.
But in reality, those weaknesses are what made them who they are. Like, for instance, the screwdrivers. Like,
Yeah.
oh, look at all these terrible gifts that we have.
Yeah.
Uh, like this is what my husband gets us all on our birthdays and our anniversary, and those screwdrivers are what like save the day,
Yep.
like in the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's cool how you get to see that being perfect is not all it's cracked out to be.
Yeah. And who gets to define what perfect is?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think there's the world has this definition of what they want you to think perfect is.
Hmm.
Um, and social media definitely doesn't help.
Yeah,
You go on Instagram and you see all these fake pictures.
yeah, exactly. You
You know,
don't know what's going on with the smile behind that picture.
yeah, yeah, but real perfection comes from that family, for instance, in this kind of scenario. Even though this family has had some struggles, they've always been there
Yeah.
for each other. They're always doing things together. And yes, they might have some different perspectives on what they want to do in life. They're always uh, uh, willing to try
Hmm.
to do stuff, which that's where you know perfection is fake. There's no
Yeah,
such thing as
yeah, it
perfection in
does
this
not
world.
exist.
Yeah, but you know, genuine love is what really matters.
Yeah.
And as you see the Posey family, they seem to be an actually loving family.
Hmm. Yeah, it
There's
seems like
nothing wrong.
they're a pretty good, cool
Yeah,
family. I think in their own way they are perfect. Like
yeah,
they're perfect for each other.
yeah.
Uh,
They have genuine affection for each other, and
yeah,
that's what matters.
yeah,
But that's what mom was missing out.
yeah.
She didn't understand that. Yes, they're out there and they have this Instagram perfect life.
Hmm.
They're taking perfect pictures, but that's not
Yeah,
everybody's gift.
yeah.
You know, how much time do they spend in the backyard together?
Hmm.
You know, dealing with dad's, his little hunting deadfall traps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think a lot of people like to look at they see social media, they look at themselves and think, man, I wish I was like that person. When in reality, what you have might be better than that person, or
They might be looking at your
yeah,
stuff
they
and
might be
going,
looking at your stuff and thinking the same thing.
yeah,
And I feel like that might be a hard thing for people to believe.
mm,
But if you look more inward at yourself at what you're really getting out of life, you might be happier than you really think you are.
mm. Yeah, it'd be really easy for me to look at. I have some friends uh, that get to travel, for
Hmm.
instance. They've gone to Iceland. I always wanted to go to Iceland.
Yeah.
They've gotten to go to Italy, to the Greek Isles, and all that. And I look at that and I get this little bit of jealousy there.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever,
Yeah.
um,
Like, man, I wish I was a traveling vlogger.
yeah, but I really wish that I could do that. But then, I look at all the stuff. If I was going to do that, if I was going to go to these places, what else would I have to sacrifice?
Hmm.
Well, there's some pretty awesome family times that I would have had to sacrifice, because you only get so much time off, you only have so much money. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And, most of Brienne and I's and our family's, trips together um, have been to see family and to spend time with family because we think that's more important.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are people out there who look at, you know, I don't really post much to social media, but they look at Brianna's social media
Hmm.
and they see pictures of our whole big extended family, for this random thing, and they have their own little bit of jealousy, like, man,
Yeah.
I wish I could have that, So, um, really, it comes down to finding out what's really important in your
Hmm.
life. Because for me, yeah, it'd be cool to see Iceland, but I wouldn't be willing to give the other stuff up.
Yeah. The concept of perfect just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Kind of tied to that whole technology thing is technology in this movie kind of is a big idol in
Yes,
everybody. I mean, it's really a reflection of our own society. Technology is an idol in our lives. It just
it is.
is. So I was curious, like, in what ways has technology been an idol in your life?
Oh, I the first time this really struck me is when we started doing our 40 days of fasting and
Hmm.
prayer. This is several years ago. You know, in the Church of Christ, tradition, we don't really practice Lent. It's not
Yeah,
something that we do.
yeah. I mentioned it to my sister-in-law this last week, and she said, "You're not Catholic."
Yeah.
It's
So
like, I know, it's
so
okay.
and we don't even call it Lent. We call it 40 days of fasting and
Yeah,
prayer, but it's essentially the same
yeah.
thing. So the first time we did this, probably 10 years ago, um, I decided that I was spending too much time, like everybody else 10 years ago, on
Hmm.
Facebook and
Hmm.
social media stuff. So I decided that I was going to uh, not do anything on my phone that wasn't work related.
Yeah.
So no social media, no games, none of that stuff. And I had actual physical withdrawals where I'd be sitting there like wanting to do something with my hands.
Well,
You
it's
know,
like you have ADD.
yeah, it's like I would have like the TV's on, I'm watching something,
Hmm.
but that's not enough.
I need to be doing
I
something.
need to be doing something else, because the TV's fine, but I want to also be scrolling through something on my
Yeah.
phone. And so I could definitely see it's not so much anymore. I don't care about social media
Yeah.
all that much anymore. Um, but I could definitely see at times where it has been an idol. When you have any kind of addiction,
Hmm.
is essentially idolatry. And that was definitely an addiction. And it's painful, to think that this stinking thing could be an idol, but it is.
Yeah.
It really, really is, and we all struggle with it.
Yeah.
I mean, go anywhere where you don't get cell service and see how frustrated you get. That's
That's
kind of like
true.
the first clue when you don't have access to. I remember we were uh, we were up at the desert tower.
Hmm.
How many people in our little group that were up at the desert tower were frustrated because they
Yeah.
couldn't watch YouTube or they
Yeah.
couldn't, watch
What
Netflix.
what am I supposed to do out here?
I
What?
don't know, sit around the fire and watch the stars.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do that. That sounds boring.
Go hunt some more rattlesnakes.
Yeah, yeah. So it's definitely Yeah, it's very easy to allow our whole lives and our whole focus to get sucked into these
Yeah, I think
things.
phones are really because so much potential of things to draw you in, not just
Oh yeah,
Facebook, but
everything.
text messages, other kinds of social media, games. It's all on this.
Angry Bird.
News, politics,
Yeah,
stocks.
I don't look at any of that stuff. But Angry Birds, I hadn't played Angry Birds in probably 5-6 years, and Instagram, threw up an Angry Birds advertisement like that was a fun game. I want to play that again.
Hit you right in the
So
the
so
memory.
I re-downloaded it and started playing, and I've been playing it for like a month, and I'm already on like level 400 and something. So
I,
it definitely sucks you in.
yeah, I video games was something I was really obsessed with and addicted to as a teenager. I played too much video games. I remember
A
me and
lot of it in my house.
yeah, a lot of it was at Graham's house, but a lot of it also was on my own. And what's really funny is on the old Call of Duty Modern Warfare games,
Yeah,
it would tell you exactly how many hours you played, which it does that now with some newer games.
yeah,
But I remember having like the over 48 days of this game played, and that's like of actual gameplay, not
yeah.
just like
Having
having
it
the game
on.
on.
Yeah,
That's of actual gameplay, and thinking I remember thinking like how proud I was that I was like, yeah, like I have so much time dedicated to this game, and I was just so proud of it. But in once uh once it was starting to come towards time for me to look to go into college and moving out of the house, I started to realize how much of an addiction I had to video games. And so I'm kind of an all in or nothing kind of person,
mm,
which frustrates my wife when I'm like going on a diet. I'm like I have to cut everything out. I can't take it. I can't like
yeah.
ease it in or else it won't work for me. I have to just cut it out. So I sold every video game I had, just got rid of everything. And my parents were like, "Are you okay?" Like, yeah, cut, I'm cutting off this idol in my life, and it felt good.
Yeah,
Like right now, I'm doing Lent for, and I got rid of movies and TV, and that's pretty hard because I always have something playing or in YouTube videos. I'm always on YouTube,
yeah.
and I have that cut out. And I don't know how many days we're in now. Only like 5, right?
Something like that.
Only 5 days in, and it's been hard. But today's definitely been the easiest day.
Yeah,
It is. I think a lot of those things are getting rid of those idols, especially technology, is really hard at first because it's so habitual.
it is.
Like you're just in the habit of doing something like kind of like you're saying your hands. Like I gotta do something with my hands.
I'm gonna go nuts.
Yeah, I I think the for me it's been like the quiet. My apartment has been so quiet because I always have something playing. Well, what I have been doing is listening to podcasts, so I've kind of that's kind of eased
Mm,
the buffer. But I want to do something with my eyes.
yeah, and not read.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I remember the first time um, the first like practical illustration I ever had of modern day idolatry was taught to me by my father-in-law, Mike.
Hmm.
You've met him before.
Yeah.
Um, I don't even think Bree and I were married yet. If we were, we were newlyweds. But Mike had been working on this. I think it was a '68 Chevy C10. It was his first frame off restoration. Took it all the way down, restored it from bottom up, everything. He had put in countless uh, hours and money and um, energy, and I don't know if you're familiar with the term love bank.
No.
Love bank is one of those things that everybody has a bank account that in a relationship. So between a husband and wife, each person has their own love bank, and you can only make so many withdrawals without making some deposits before you go bankrupt.
I
Well, he had taken a lot of deposits from that love bank because all of his time and money was going towards this truck and not towards time with Ramona.
Mm-hmm.
And then uh, there was this moment of reality that he told me about where um, this was when Brianna's sister had first started driving, so she didn't have a car of her own. So Ramona and Katrina was the sister, started sharing a car. So Katrina had taken the car to school. Ramona typically would just ride her bike if she was needed to go somewhere, but it was raining.
Mm-hmm.
So um, she took Mike's truck to the grocery store. Well, she needed to go. It wasn't grocery store. It was somewhere else. It was somewhere she had to be. I think it was
Oh, okay.
a doctor's appointment. So she took Mike's truck to this doctor's appointment because she didn't have any other way to get there. And he said the feelings that he had when he found out that she had driven his truck in the rain to a parking lot were some of the ugliest feelings he'd ever had in his life.
Wow.
That uh, he said he was disgusted with himself at how he had felt. And he knew in that moment that that truck had become his idol.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did what you did. He
Yeah.
sold it. I can't have it.
Yeah.
He said, I can. And he wouldn't let himself buy another car like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done it since, but he's got that stuff under control.
Yeah.
But he knew that it was an addiction.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
it had become his idol, his first priority and focus.
Yeah.
Even more so than his own wife.
Mm-hmm.
And um and I think we all have stuff like that. We need to do some self-examinations in our lives
Yeah.
and really ask, what is my first priority in life? Is it, as Christians, is it really God? Does he really come before everything else? Or do I just say that?
Yeah.
Because, I would say for a lot of Christians, they would say, yes, I'm a believer. But if you had to give all your money away, would you be able to do it?
Yeah.
If you had to sell your house, could you do it? If you had to change your career, could you do it? Those are the kind of tough questions that we don't like dealing with because they're stinking scary.
Yeah.
But, what really, who really is the Lord of your life? And um, we see in this movie that the Lord of people's lives was this PAL program.
Yeah, this thing right
here. Yeah, the PAL program. It was an AI. It was basically like a
Siri on
Siri.
Androids.
Yeah, superpowered Siri for the phone, and the free Wi-Fi that came with it, the data that came with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it consumed every aspect of their lives.
Yeah, you can see in the movie how uh, how much the phones meant to them, because as soon as the power went down, uh, their Wi-Fi is gone. They're all freaking out. They don't know what to do without the internet. And then the robots come and offer these pods that
Yeah.
have free Wi-Fi. It's basically a prison cell
Yes.
that's shooting you in outer space, and they say okay to that because of the Wi-Fi.
Had free Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this one of those little 5-second jump scenes where you see, this the PAL AI get mad at the inventor of it
Mm-hmm.
and turns off Wi-Fi. So it turns off the global Wi-Fi, and then 5-second jump scene, you see like immediately absolute chaos and apocalyptic scenes
Yeah.
because people didn't know what to do with themselves without having the ability to use their phones.
That makes me wonder if the internet just like disappeared at a moment, like how the world would react to that.
We'd shut down. I mean, the entire world as we currently know it would shut down.
Yeah.
Like, not just from an addiction standpoint, but from a
Functionality.
functionality standpoint. So much of, I mean, what would Teslas do if they didn't have access to
Yeah.
I mean, every
That gas just got more expensive. More expensive than it already is right now.
so the it's very easy, so you see this family, um or all these families are freaking out, like when the robots first land and start reclaiming people, they are like joyfully going into those little pods.
Yeah.
There's not
Wi-Fi, oh, finally.
there's not any hesitation at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's kind of like because like this company is like a big company. It's kind of like if Tesla went out or Apple went out and did
Yeah.
this, you'd be like, oh, sure,
Well, sure, I can trust them.
yeah. It's
They
like,
don't mean me any harm.
yeah, like this sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as this movie kind of progresses, there's kind of this running thing in the movie where Rick, the Katie's dad, has just constantly been trying to protect her
Mm,
and keep her safe. Like that's ultimately what he's been trying to do this entire time. Is he doesn't want his daughter to go out and try to live her dream and to fail and to fall. He doesn't want that from her because that's what happened to him. He had this dream of living in the outdoors. He built his own cabin, but and it doesn't really say really what happened to where he had to give it up. But he has to sell his cabin and move away into the city, and that really hurts him. It's the worst pain he's ever gone through, and
mm,
he doesn't want that for his daughter. So to save his daughter from pain, he ends up hurting her more.
mm.
He hurts her potential and uh, is trying to keep her from who she's supposed to become. And there's this quote. I can't remember if it was Linda who says it or Katie or maybe Aaron. But there's the quote that says, "Getting hurt is part of life," and I think I think that's relatively true. What's your kind of view on getting hurt as part of life?
Well, yeah, I think as a consequence of living in a broken world, I mean, the Bible even tells us that there's going to be thorns. There's going to be um, painful parts of life. But the choice is, the question is what are we going to do with that? Are we going to allow the pain and the hurt and the brokenness to rule us,
Hmm.
or are we going to do something about it?
Yeah, I know a lot of Christians have this idea of like uh, everything uh, everything's perfect and uh, happens for a reason, and that explains all the hurt and pain.
Mm,
Uh, when I don't know if I always agree with that because I think that points a lot of the hurt towards Jesus, which is not what Jesus does at all. He takes away the pain.
hmm
He doesn't cause the pain, and I think what we do with the pain is what's important. That's It's not Jesus who's putting it through us, putting us through the pain, but it's him picking us up when we're going through the pain and getting us out of it. And that's what Jesus does. He heals.
mm,
He doesn't hurt. That's against his what he does. Kind of what you're talking about in your sermons a couple weeks ago with the Pharisees saying, if you're casting out demons, you must be from demons.
yeah,
And he says, how could I be Beelzebub if I'm the one casting out demons? I can't do that.
yeah,
That's not evil. Does not cast out evil. And I think that's kind of something that you kind of it's hard to decide that because God has a plan with my life does not mean I'm never gonna go through pain.
yeah, yeah. I think I think one of the most difficult things to wrestle with when you become a Christian is you read through the Bible and you hear sermons and you go through Bible classes, and the overarching theme is that God loves me, right? For God so loved the world,
Hmm.
you know. Um, well, if God really loved me, this is the question that I've heard countless times as a pastor. I'm sure that you have too. If God really loves me, why does life hurt so much?
Yeah.
Why is there um, all this death, and why is there all this fighting, and why is there all this ugliness happening over in the Ukraine, and um, all these awful things that happen. If God really loves people, humans, why is there all this ugliness in the world? I mean, it's one of the biggest philosophical questions, theological questions that there's ever been.
Hmm.
And the only answer that makes sense to me, maybe it doesn't make sense to you, is that just because there's brokenness in the world doesn't mean that God doesn't love us. Um, that, you know, it wasn't meant to be this way. When God created everything, He had a plan, but when creation was broken by sin, that plan went out the window. So we're still having to live with the consequences of living in that brokenness, our own sins. But that doesn't mean that God doesn't love us.
Hmm.
Just like my kids do some pretty awful things sometimes. Just like I did some pretty
As
awful things as
kids do.
kids. Yeah. Um, my daughter has said some pretty hurtful things over the years, and so is my other daughter. Gabe, not so much, but I'm sure he will. He's
Yeah.
he's still young,
Yeah.
but um, just because they say hurtful things and do hurtful things, and um, you know, break your trust and your heart at the same time, doesn't mean that you don't love them and that you wouldn't do anything for them. And I think that's what we see with God. He sees our pain and He sees our uh, heartache, but to rescue us from all of that would uh, negate a lot of the learning experiences that we need.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when your kids are little and they're out there eating dirt.
Mhm.
Kind of have to just let them eat the dirt. Let them learn. Let them get the
It's not going to kill them.
yeah. Let it build up their immune systems. It'll make them stronger. They'll realize this is not good for me when I'm
Dirt's not
pooping
good.
out rocks.
Yeah.
But I think what you see happen a lot is Jesus takes broken people and he makes them into beautiful things, and
Mhm.
that's what God did with us in creation. Is we come from dust and now we're humans. Like God takes the hurt and the broken and makes us whole.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of something that is hard to grasp because that's kind of counter what culture tells us and what a lot of modern medicine really probably feels like. But it's uh, going through pain and going through hurt helps build you up and make you stronger,
That's
and that's part of
it
why
gives
we
you a
have
story.
Jesus. Yeah. Also, yeah, good story.
But I mean, it's oftentimes, you know, a lot of times the way that we connect with somebody else is, I mean, you can tell the stories about the good times and the things that you have in common, but those moments when you have a really deepened relationship often come from being able to open up and share really the stories of hurt and pain.
Yeah, that's really where our testimonies come from.
Mm,
I got one more point to talk about if you have anything else.
okay.
You have anything else?
You said you had one more.
Yeah.
I have one more.
Okay. So kind of last thing I had going on was this whole idea of relationships being worth the trouble. Because a lot of times I think people look at friendships or uh, maybe intimate relationships, romantic relationships, marriage, family, and they think about, is this worth the trouble?
Mm,
Because I mean, I can think about a lot of those things. There's a lot of good that comes from relationships, but there's also a lot of pain. And something that you see Katie kind of juggle back and forth as she's trying to break off from her family and find her people,
Mm.
uh, is she kind of is evaluating her life. She talks about how her family, you get to see the people that you love happy in
Mm.
those relationships. You get to that you know that they don't always get it right. I mean, you see her dad really just not get it right. He does not understand her at all. But the what's important is the trying.
Mm.
Is that you're trying to be there. And I think that's a big part of relationships, whether it's a relationship with your parents, your siblings, your friends, your girlfriend, your wife,
Mm.
your husband, whatever it is that you're trying. And she has this phrase where she says, "Trying is worth it."
Mm.
And I think it's important that we fight for our relationships in life,
Mm.
because sometimes we're all we have with each other. Like we have to confide in each other so much, and it's important to hold on to those relationships and do the necessary things to keep them and show them that they're valuable. Like in marriage, I'm not always going to want to do the things my wife wants to do, but it's important that I do those things to show her how much she means to me,
Mm.
because I value my marriage. I value that relationship. Same goes with your parents. My parents want to do lame stuff a lot when I was a kid that I didn't want to do, but they're my parents and they take care of me and provide me and love me, so I'm going to do the same for them. And I think we have to realize that with Jesus, there's that same dynamic. He a lot of times we look at uh or a lot of people like to look at religion and think about, man, there's all these rules, all these
Mm.
things I'm supposed to do, and they don't really think about the relationship aspect of it.
Yeah.
That Jesus is someone that's always there for
Yeah.
you.
They see a cosmic killjoy.
Yes. And yes, there's things that you're supposed to do to help make that relationship stronger, but they're things to help you
Yeah.
to make you feel better. And it's hard to grasp until you actually live that life and live that relationship and growing with Jesus and seeing that this is something really valuable that I need to invest in. Uh,
Yeah.
she's spending all her time investing in her technology and movies up to this point, and she starts to realize, I need to start investing more of my time and just social time into my family, like, because they are valuable to me.
Mm. Yeah. There's I think about Katie as you get towards the end of this movie. Um, there's this scene where Rick's been caught, and little brother, I think he's been caught. I think the only one that hasn't been caught by this point is Katie.
Hmm.
She's out there, but Rick has been trapped, and he's in a little confinement cell next to the person who started this Google like company. It's
Yeah,
called PAL, and he notices that this giant tech guru. I mean, this would be like an Elon Musk kind
yeah.
of person is watching his daughter's video on YouTube and loving it. And
Hmm.
he's like, "What are you watching that? This is one of the most important men in their history, in
Hmm.
their current events." And he's watching his nobody sister. He's like, "Well, it makes me feel good. And sometimes you just need to find something that makes you happy."
Yeah.
And then as he's watching this is something that he had watched, and because he was so consumed with worry for his daughter that he never actually watched what his daughter was trying to do.
Yeah.
This whole time, his daughter was trying to communicate to him through these movies that she was making.
Yeah. Exactly how she was feeling too.
Yeah. But, so they were both trying, but they were trying in their own way. There's a book that came out years ago called Love Languages. um, the basic premises is that everybody has their own love language. You know, um, for me, it's quality time spent. For Brianna, it's words of affirmation. Um, so the premise is that I can try as much as I want to communicate love in my language, and Brianna might receive some portion of that. She might understand some portion of it. If I'm intentionally trying to spend time with her, then um, she might feel some of it. But the most effective way to communicate love to Brianna, my wife, is through words of affirmation. That's what communicates most to her. And as you see this movie play out, um, you see this father and daughter who are both trying to communicate love. They're just using the wrong language.
Yeah.
And they're both trying. They're just
Hmm.
trying in a way that is proving to be ineffective. But once you get towards the end of this movie, they kind of shift and realize, well, maybe I can do things differently.
Hmm.
And maybe I can, even though I really don't want to. For like Brianna, I hate using um, like the words of affirmation thing because it feels fake to me. You
Yeah.
know, um, if I'm trying to use those kind of words, like, well, did somebody tell you to say that? I don't know why. It's just like,
No, it's funny because Lauren's the exact same way. Because my love language is words of affirmation, and Lauren's is quality time,
yeah,
kind of like
yeah,
you and Bree. And when I tell her like, "Hey, I need more words of affirmation," she's like, "I don't want to like set reminders and have a script because then it feels like I'm being forced to say
yeah.
it."
Well, now that you telling me that you need that,
Yeah,
I don't want to do it. Yeah,
yeah. Like I explained to her, and this might be the same with Bree. It doesn't matter if it's a script. I just need to hear those words.
yeah.
Like it's still my
That's what she
language.
told me.
Like, and it's like if someone's speaking broken uh broken Spanglish to you instead of Spanish, if you
Mm,
only understand English, it's like they're trying,
yeah,
and you see that effort. They're trying to speak that love language. That's all
yeah,
that's important.
yeah. And that's what Brie and I came up with years ago is that we have to find some kind of happy medium.
Hmm.
That yes, it makes me uncomfortable, but because I love you, I'll do it anyways.
Yeah,
And Bree's fortunately her second one is quality time, so that
that
works to the
helps. Yeah,
advantage there. Um, my second one is I think it's acts of service, but can't remember.
that's Lauren's
Mm,
second.
yeah, but it's amazing to me how much alike Lauren and I are.
Yeah. I married Graham.
Woo, dang! But so in your relationships, spouses, kids, um, parents, whatever it is, I want to recommend. I don't. We don't usually do that on this thing, but it is. You can take the tests online.
Hmm.
You don't have to read the books. You can take the tests online. The books are worth reading. They're good
Yeah,
reads.
it's not a long book. It's pretty short.
Yeah, you could do it in a day.
Yeah,
Um, but even if you just each take the test, you can kind of figure out the rest from
yeah,
there. It's worth getting to know. And I think this world is all about efficiency,
yeah.
and we want to be able to do things in the most efficient way. And finding
Hmm.
out what somebody's love language is the most efficient way to be able to find a way to say "I love you."
Yeah.
So
It doesn't have to be with just a spouse or a significant
no,
other.
any relationship.
Yeah, any relationship it follows. You just there's all these there's the Enneagrams, and
Yeah,
there's the Meyer Briggs, and there's uh
disc.
what's the star one, or the horoscopes. There's all
Yeah,
those different things that's to help people understand each other.
yeah,
But I think this is honestly the best one.
yeah.
Bec-
Especially from a relationship standpoint.
yeah, because I think loving you, knowing how to tell each other that you love each other is just so impactful.
Because it doesn't have to be just romantic love. There's
No,
lots of different relationships that you have in life that require love. If they don't have love there, you're not going to have a very good relationship with anybody.
no.
So, um, so even if it's your mother-in-law, of all people,
Hmm.
I love my mother-in-law, but a lot of people will have I was blessed there, but find a way to be able to communicate love in a way that is most efficient, most effective, most impacting, so you get max bang for the buck.
Hmm.
But
That's a good way to look at it.
yeah, and then one thing that you see through this whole story is this idea of dreams. This movie, Katie's dream, as we've talked about, is to be this filmmaker, but her dad doesn't want her to get hurt if that dream doesn't work out. I mean, how many people? I mean, just as a off the top of your head kind of thing,
Yeah.
how many people do you think try to be filmmakers every year?
Nowadays, probably a lot.
I mean, 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been
Yeah.
that many, but nowadays with YouTube and TikTok,
Yeah.
there's
When I was a young teenager, that's what I wanted to do.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that is there's filmmakers doesn't necessarily mean movies and TV anymore. It can be
Yeah.
a whole variety of
It
stuff.
could be so many things. You
Yeah,
could be the director, actor, and
yeah,
editor all in one if
yeah.
you work
The
on YouTube or Twitch.
so um, but he didn't want her to get hurt by failing, and then later, we find out that uh, this fear was because his dream of getting to live in the woods, like we talked about a little while ago, um, had gotten lost. It seems like when they had this baby, it was when Katie was, probably just a few months old.
Hmm.
They sold this place. My guess is they needed to be closer to the city for work and, maybe even for some safety issues.
Yeah.
My guess is that house might not have even have had heat in it or maybe even power.
Hmm.
It might have been pretty rustic.
Yeah.
So just, in that moment of you have to grow up kind of thing that we all struggle with. But he lost out on his dream, and that dream losing it hurt him deeply. Have you ever had a dream that just didn't work out? And did it hurt when that dream just didn't work out?
Yeah. I think there's a couple different dreams I had as a teenager. One of them was filmmaking, like I mentioned.
Mm,
Another one was being a professional gamer of some sorts. I was pretty good at Call of Duty, and I I played in a couple like tournaments for money
mm,
when I was younger. Uh, but I remember my parents telling me like, "Hey, that probably isn't going to work out as a profession." And I mean, they actually can now, but it hurt hearing that
mm,
and thinking like, man, this is I have to give up this dream to kind of grow up
yeah,
and do something that I'm supposed to do. And it's ultimately those weren't those even though they were some like cool dreams that I had, they ultimately it wasn't what God wanted me to do.
yeah,
And I had to come to that realization when I was in college for a different major. Not I was going in engineering, not ministry, and it took that for me to realize like this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be going into ministry. And I mean, it doesn't have to be ministry for someone else out there, but
mm,
really everyone has dreams and aspirations
yeah,
of what they want to do with their life. And I think it's harder to come to the realization that this is not what God wants me to do with my life because it's just not.
you think that the possibility of hurt negates the um, need and desire to live out your dreams?
Yeah, it's possible because I mean, you kind of see with Katie's dad that she's trying to protect him from that. She's trying to protect, or he's trying to protect her from that hurt. But and that it can be scary taking that leap to go for that dream, but it could also be just as equally scary to go for what God's telling you to do
Mm,
rather than what you've been dreaming for.
yeah, yeah. As you I mean, you have those childhood dreams that you don't really, they don't really usually add up to much.
Yeah,
The I want to be a fireman.
yeah.
Which there's plenty of people who
I mean,
actually grow up to be a fireman.
Robert wanted to be a pilot, and he just got accepted in the Air Force. I mean, maybe he'll actually get to live out that dream.
I honestly hope that he
I hope
does.
so, because that's been his dream for a long
I
time.
hope that Robert gets to fly something.
Yes.
Maybe it's not a fighter jet. Maybe it's a transport plane.
Who knows?
Who knows? But I hope that he gets to live out that dream.
Yeah.
But then you have your dreams that you have once you're in that teenage dreamer mode,
Mhm.
YouTube person, that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. But I think the ones that hurt um, a little bit more are the ones you have once you're kind of as an adult and you kind of have this idea. And maybe it's not even necessarily a dream, it's just an idea of you're supposed to, what your life's supposed to be. You know, for Brian and I, we were the typical couple. We thought, well, we have gotten married. I have a pretty good job. I have pretty good benefits. This is pre-ministry.
Mhm.
Pretty good job, pretty good benefits. We've been married for a year and a half, 2 years. What's next? So next on that thing was to have some kids, and uh, that just wasn't happening for about 2 years. Just wasn't happening, and we went to the doctor, and that dream of having kids was kind of we're told, stop trying. It's not going to happen. If you really feel like you have to have kids, look at adoption. And we were crushed in that
Mhm.
moment. But I would say that during that time, because of the pain and the hurt that went along with it, we ended up becoming closer because we realized that we're in this together
Mhm.
and that we're not separate. Now, fast forward, you know, a few years since then. That was 2000. That was 2002, and now we have 3 biological kids, a whole bunch of other adopted family people.
Yeah.
So doctors don't necessarily know everything, but yeah, I don't think that having a dream, even though sometimes you might get hurt, negates the need for having dreams.
Mhm.
So, um, but yeah, what did you think about this movie overall?
I thought it was a great movie. Like we were saying, flew under my radar. Did not expect a lot. Those expectations got blown out of the water. I think it is probably the best animated film that came out last year.
Yeah, I think I want to watch it again without trying to take notes, just
Yeah,
to enjoy it.
just to enjoy it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's I if you have not seen it, go watch it real quick. Like it's just such a good movie. It's on Netflix. If you enjoyed Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, it's kind of got the same comedy.
same animator, same comedy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just great. That's all I can say. It's
yeah,
a good movie, good family movie for everybody.
and just allow yourself to kind of laugh with it. I mean, some of
Yeah.
it's stupid and goofy, and that's okay.
Hmm.
Uh, it is a unique animated movie that's out there in the world. I mean, there's so much. I'm not putting down Disney. I love Disney. I love Pixar,
Yeah.
but it's so something that Disney and Pixar wouldn't do,
Yeah.
and it's so great because of that.
Yeah.
Because it's so different than the other animations that you have out there.
The makers of this movie really just wanted to have fun, and they
Yeah,
did.
they did. Uh, Based on a almost true story.
Yeah.
Not the robot apocalypse part, but the family relational
Yeah, the
part,
family relation.
which is really what is at the
Yes,
heart of this whole
the core
thing.
of the movie.
Yeah, the robot apocalypse is just how they're telling the story,
Yeah,
but the real part is uh, has everything to do with the power of a family
hmm
and the awesome aspects of getting to be a part of a family that loves each other.
I really want to know what the director's dad thinks of this movie.
If
Like
he's even
if
watched it.
he hates, yeah, if he hates that this movie's about him and his son, or if
Yeah,
he just loves it because it's kind of like a love letter.
it is. Yeah, because he's not putting dad. I mean, in the beginning, it's kind of looks like dad's a jerk,
Yeah,
but at the end of it, that's not it at all.
yeah,
That's not it at all. And mom's awesome. I wonder if his mom's really like that.
yeah.
If she's
It's how he probably views his mom.
what was it that set mom off? We probably should have had
Uh,
a talking point
I
about that.
think it was they took her son or something like that.
Yeah,
Like them taking Aaron or something like that was
yeah,
what set her off.
yeah.
Like, that's my baby boy.
Anyways, great movie. Check
Yeah,
it out on Netflix. I think everybody in America probably has Netflix by now, so you really don't
probably.
have an excuse. It's
Or
not
you
a
have
long
someone
movie.
else's password.
Yeah, it's not a long movie. It's only an hour and a half long,
Yeah,
so it's not like the Batman movie that just came out that's like 3 hours long.
yeah. Which I've seen twice now. And man, that's a lot of hours of watching Batman.
In a short amount of time.
Yeah.
But next week, we're going to be doing a different kind of movie. This is one that you can actually watch on Disney Plus. It is a Ryan Reynolds movie called Free Guy. It came out over the summer, right?
I think so.
So relatively new movie.
Yeah.
Very popular movie. Very good movie. Lots of great themes in there. Specifically, what I love probably more than anything else in this movie is the friendship story.
Hmm.
There's lots of other little stories and illustrations that are in there, but the friendship that you see illustrated in Free Guy is something I'm excited to talk about.
We'll see you next week.
All right, see you then.